I've been driving for Lyft for a few years now, mostly during late-night shifts. The roads are quieter, the tips are better, and it's peaceful in its own strange way. But that calm comes with a trade-off. Sometimes, you get a passenger who stays in your mind long after the night ends. A few months ago, I got one of those rides. I've always been cautious. I've had my share of odd or drunk passengers, but nothing, absolutely nothing, ever compared to what happened that night. It started like any other shift. I was in my old 2005 Volvo, the one that rattles a bit but never fails me. It was around 2 in the morning, the streets completely deserted. Just how I liked it. Then my phone buzzed with a request. Pick up, a convenience store a few blocks away. I accepted instantly, short distance, decent pay. But as I got closer, this weird gut feeling kicked in. That unshakable sense that something's wrong, but you can't explain why. When I arrived, I immediately understood. The store was closed. Not dimly lit, closed. Every light inside was off, the parking lot empty. No cars. No clerk. Nothing. And there he was. A guy pacing out front in a dirty gray hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed in years. The sleeves were shredded, and he kept twitching, jerking his head from side to side, as if watching for someone. His movements were unnatural, erratic. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I almost canceled right then. My thumb hovered over the cancel ride button. But against my better judgment, I didn't. I pulled up. He turned toward my car and walked up fast, too fast. He opened the back door and slid in without a word. His smell hit first, like cigarettes and metal. The moment I started driving, I regretted it. He didn't look at his phone, didn't speak, didn't even glance out the window. He just stared straight ahead, right into my rearview mirror. His eyes locked with mine. Unblinking. Cold. And that's when the real unease began. The air in the car felt heavy, like I was breathing through water. The man's reflection stayed fixed in my mirror, his hollow, eyes never blinking. I tried to focus on the road, but my heartbeat was louder than my engine. Usually, when things get quiet, I turn on the radio. So, without thinking, I flicked it on, some soft old rock song playing. But the second the sound filled the car, he snapped. "Turn it off," he said sharply. His voice was deep, raspy, the kind that makes you freeze. I didn't argue. I turned it off right away. He leaned back again, silent. The next few minutes dragged. It felt like an hour. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke again. "You ever pick up someone you shouldn't have?" I let out a weak laugh. "Well, I hope not," I said, trying to sound casual. No reaction. Not even a smile. He muttered something to himself, words too low for me to hear, and then started talking again. Fast, like he couldn't stop. He said he used to be an Uber driver once, but quit because, as he put it, some punk stole from me. He kept smiling while saying it. That smile didn't fit the story. It wasn't one of humor. It was dark, almost proud. Then he said something that froze my blood. "It's funny how much trust you put in someone sitting right behind you." That line hit me like a knife. My hands tightened on the wheel. I didn't dare respond. I just focused on the GPS, counting down the minutes until I could drop him off. But he didn't stop talking. His voice turned strange, mumbling, apologizing under his breath. "I didn't mean it," he whispered over and over. "I didn't mean it." It didn't sound like he was talking to me. It sounded like he was talking to someone who wasn't there. We were maybe 5 minutes from his stop when he suddenly yelled, "You missed the turn." I jumped, slamming the brakes even though I hadn't missed it. The GPS was still on track. His outburst made my pulse spike. "Pull over," he barked. I did. Slowly. My hands were shaking. The car rolled to a stop on an empty stretch of road. The second I shifted into park, headlights appeared behind me. A police car, moving slow, its spotlight sweeping across the road. My chest tightened. When the beam passed over my car, the man in the back seat slouched down low, like he didn't want to be seen. He slid so far down, he was practically lying flat across the seat. He whispered something I couldn't understand, then closed his eyes. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The police cruiser kept driving, passing by us without stopping. The silence afterward was deafening. He stayed down for what felt like forever. Then, just as suddenly, he sat up. Looked at me through the mirror. "You got lucky," he said softly. Before I could reply, he opened the door and stepped out, not even closing it behind him. He disappeared into the dark, vanishing between the trees like a shadow. I sat there frozen, staring at the open door, waiting to see if he'd come back. He didn't. Eventually, I reached over and shut the door myself. My hands were still trembling as I pulled away. I didn't take another ride that night. It wasn't until a few weeks later that the full weight of that night hit me. I was scrolling through my phone one morning when a local news article caught my eye. A convenience store robbery. Same town. Same night. The timestamp made my stomach drop. The robbery happened less than 10 minutes before I got that ride request. 2 blocks away from the exact spot, I picked that man up. The description matched too. The same dirty hoodie, same pacing behavior. The suspect hadn't been caught. I must have stared at that article for 5 minutes, realizing how close I came to disaster. He wasn't just some strange passenger. I'd been sitting inches away from a criminal, possibly a violent one. He could have hurt me. He could have killed me. That thought hasn't left me since. I installed a dash cam the very next day. I still drive nights sometimes, but I'm more careful now. Every passenger who gets in, I check twice. The way they move, the way they talk, the look in their eyes. Because once you've seen real danger sitting quietly in your back seat, you never forget it. I used to live in the city. The noise, the movement, the chaos. That's what I thought I loved. But after one horrifying event that I still can't talk about, I couldn't handle noise anymore. Every sound felt like an electric shock crawling under my skin. My psychiatrist called it phonophobia, an intense fear and physical reaction to sound. Imagine the pins and needles feeling when your leg falls asleep, except it's in your chest every single time a car honks or a door slams. It was unbearable. 3 years ago, I packed everything I owned and left. I found a listing for a small cabin buried deep in the Pacific Northwest. I won't say exactly where, but it was somewhere in Oregon. It seemed perfect. No neighbors for miles, no city noise, barely any cell signal. For the first time in a long time, I thought I might actually find peace. When I arrived, the cabin was exactly as promised, small but cozy. Thick pine beams, a stone fireplace, the faint scent of wood and old books. It felt like stepping back in time. I could breathe again. The first few days were heaven. I'd wake up to the sound of birds instead of sirens, fall asleep to the wind whispering through the trees. The quiet wasn't just peaceful, it was healing. About a week in, I heard a knock at the door, unexpected, sharp, and foreign. I opened it to see a woman in her late 60s, holding a basket of preserves like something out of a storybook. She introduced herself as Michelle, said she lived about 10 minutes down the trail. Her long gray hair framed piercing blue eyes that made me feel like she could see right through me. She smiled faintly, extended the basket, and said something I'll never forget. Keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe. It sounded less like neighborly advice and more like a warning. When I closed the door, I stood there in silence. I listened, waiting to hear her footsteps fade, but she didn't walk away for nearly a full minute. And that was the moment I realized silence can be deceiving. After Michelle left that day, I couldn't shake her words. Keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe. It echoed in my mind like an unfinished sentence. Still, she seemed harmless. Maybe she was just one of those eccentric mountain folks who lived by old traditions. I set the basket she gave me on the table and forgot about it. I didn't even look inside. That night, a thunderstorm rolled through, rare for Oregon, but powerful. The sound of rain battering the roof mixed with the occasional growl of thunder. I lit a few candles when the lights flickered, curled up by the fireplace, and tried to read. Oddly enough, it was the first noise that didn't make me tense up. The storm's rhythm was natural, soothing, almost therapeutic. But then came the knock. It wasn't gentle. It was hard, like someone was pounding with both fists. My chest tightened instantly. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the door, every nerve in my body on alert. When I looked through the small glass pane, my heart nearly stopped. It was Michelle, drenched head to toe, her hair plastered to her face, gripping her flashlight so tightly that her knuckles were white. Before I could even say hello, she shouted over the rain. I saw someone near your woodpile. You need to know about it. Her tone was urgent, almost frantic. I stepped onto the porch and shone my light toward the trees, but the rain made it impossible to see anything clearly. The shadows moved with every gust of wind, playing tricks on my eyes. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded quickly, her blue eyes darting toward the woods as if she expected someone to emerge. Be careful, she said, and without another word, she turned and disappeared into the darkness. I stood there until her light faded completely, rain soaking through my shirt. When I finally stepped back inside, something about her warning began to unravel in my mind. If her cabin was 10 minutes away, how could she have seen my woodpile from there? The only way she could have known was if she had been on my property. And that realization made the storm outside feel a whole lot closer. I barely slept that night. Every creak, every gust of wind scraping against the cabin walls made me flinch. Michelle's warning kept replaying in my head. Keep your lanterns full, your wits sharper than your axe. I locked every window and door, even shoved a chair beneath the doorknob just in case. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but I could still hear the occasional rumble of thunder echoing through the mountains. At some point after midnight, exhaustion finally pulled me under, until I woke to the sharp sound of a branch snapping outside my window. It wasn't the random fall of a storm-weakened limb. It was deliberate, slow, heavy. My pulse quickened as I strained to listen. Nothing but silence for a few seconds, then another snap, closer this time. I forced myself out of bed and crept toward the window. I lifted the corner of the curtain just enough to peek through, and froze. Standing near the edge of the woods was a figure. A woman. Even in the dim moonlight, I could see the tangled gray hair and pale, thin hands. It was Michelle. But she wasn't facing my house. She was turned toward the trees, her posture rigid, like she was listening for something. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, and that's when she started to turn her head toward me. I ducked below the window instantly, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. I waited there for what felt like minutes, not daring to move. When I finally gathered enough courage to look again, she was gone. Just gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat there on the couch with my flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, staring at the door until the sky began to lighten. By morning, I tried convincing myself it had just been the storm, or my paranoia, or maybe even a dream. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen. And worse, I knew she hadn't been protecting me that night. She had been watching. By the time night fell again, my nerves were shot. I hadn't eaten, hadn't worked, just sat by the window, staring at the tree line. Every sound outside made me flinch. The silence that had once calmed me now felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. I decided I'd pack up and leave in the morning. Whatever peace I thought I'd find here was gone. But fate didn't plan on letting me wait that long. It was around midnight when I heard it, a knock. Not the harsh banging from the storm before. Just soft, measured. 3 slow knocks. My skin prickled instantly. I grabbed my flashlight and crept toward the door, careful not to make the floorboards creak. My heart thudded so hard I thought whoever was outside would hear it. I looked through the glass pane beside the door. It wasn't Michelle. It was a man. Broad-shouldered, bald, his jacket soaked through. He stood perfectly still in the rain, head slightly tilted, like he could hear me breathing. I froze. My body screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, another set of knocks. Harder this time. I backed away slowly, whispering to myself that he'd leave. But instead, he spoke. Open up. The voice was rough, deep, and strangely calm. I bolted, ran straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and called 911. My voice was shaking so bad I could barely tell the operator my address. Then came the sound I dreaded, the front door splintering open. The crash echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Glass shattered. Footsteps stomped across the living room. He was inside. The operator's voice in my ear told me to stay quiet, that help was on the way. But I could barely breathe. I pressed my hand over my mouth as the footsteps moved closer, and then stopped. Silence. Minutes crawled by like hours before the sound of sirens broke through the night. I heard shouting, police voices, and then heavy boots running across the porch. When they found me, I was trembling in the corner. They searched the woods, but no one was there. The next morning, I asked them to check Michelle's cabin. They did, and told me it had been abandoned for decades. I left that same day and never looked back. My name is Luke. My girlfriend, Catherine, and I met 3 years ago as freshmen in college. We go to Stanford, which has been my dream school since I was 8 years old. Neither of us is from California. Both of us actually grew up in Ohio. She's from Cincinnati, and I'm from a small town outside Columbus. Maybe that's why we were so drawn to each other. People from the same kind of place always seem to find each other, even hundreds of miles from home. Stanford isn't exactly small, but most students are locals from California. So, Being two Midwestern kids gave us a bond that stood out. One of the traditions we started early on was how we split Christmas. Catherine's loved by my relatives. Her presence is practically expected now. Her family's house is only a 2-hour drive from mine. So every year we spend Christmas Eve with my family and then drive through the night to her house for Christmas Day. It's funny, because my family celebrates Christmas Eve night, while hers celebrates on the day itself. Until I met her, I didn't even realize most families did that. But the truth is, my favorite part of the whole holiday isn't the parties or gifts, it's that late-night drive. That drive has become its own tradition. Every year, around midnight, we load up my car and hit the road while the rest of the world sleeps. The route isn't a major highway. It's all quiet back roads, fields, trees, and the occasional distant farmhouse. It feels like the world is ours. We always blast Juice WRLD music during the drive. Yeah, I know, people make jokes about it, but it's our thing. Singing along together to those songs always feels like we're perfectly in sync. This past Christmas Eve started the same way. After dinner with my entire extended family, Catherine and I packed the car and left around midnight. Snow was falling lightly, the heater was blasting, and everything felt perfect. But that perfection didn't last long. What happened next would become one of the most disturbing nights of my life. One that still makes my hands shake whenever my phone rings. It started with a simple sound. A phone call. The music was playing softly in the background when my phone suddenly rang. The sound cut through the warmth of the car, and I glanced down, annoyed. Who would call this late? The screen showed an unknown number. I ignored it. Probably a scam. Catherine smirked and said, "Even the scammers don't take Christmas off." I chuckled, and the call ended. But not even 3 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same number. This time, I sighed loudly and let it ring out. Catherine looked at me, concerned. "That's weird," she said quietly. I shrugged it off, pretending it didn't bother me, but it did. I hated the thought of someone spamming my phone in the middle of nowhere. When the call came a third time, I lost it. My irritation boiled over. I grabbed the phone off the console, swiping hard across the screen. Catherine jumped at my sudden movement as I snapped, "Hello." Silence. For a few seconds, I thought it was a bad connection. Then I heard faint static, soft, like an old radio struggling to tune in. I was just about to hang up when a voice came through. "Hello, Luke." My entire body froze. My name. The voice was calm, deep, and oddly familiar. But I couldn't place it. My mouth went dry, and my heart started pounding so hard I could hear it over the car engine. I stammered, "Who is this?" No answer, just that same quiet static. Then the voice started again. Only this time it began reciting things it had no business knowing. My full name. My address. Even where I worked last summer. Every single word hit like a punch. There was no way a stranger could know all that. I felt Catherine's hand grab my arm. "Luke, hang up," she whispered, her voice shaking. But I couldn't. I was too stunned. My knuckles turned white around the steering wheel as I tried to process it. Finally, I asked, "What do you want?" The voice paused for a long moment before replying, almost whispering, "I'm not here for you, Luke. I'm here for Catherine." The air in the car turned to ice. Catherine gasped, and my heart stopped. How did he know she was with me? For a few seconds, the car was completely silent, except for the hum of the engine and the faint static still bleeding from the phone speaker. Then, Catherine whispered, "Luke, hang up." Her voice cracked. She was pale, frozen, staring straight ahead. My mind couldn't keep up with what was happening. How did this man know her name? And how did he know she was sitting right next to me? I forced my voice to stay calm. "You've got the wrong number," I said, trying to sound confident. "There's no Catherine here." The man laughed. A slow, quiet laugh that didn't sound human. More like someone pretending to know what laughter should sound like. "She's sitting right next to you," he said softly. I slammed my foot on the brake. The car skidded slightly on the icy road before stopping on the shoulder. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I could barely breathe. "Luke, drive," Catherine yelled, but before I could respond, she reached into my lap and snatched the phone. With one swipe, she hung up. "What are you doing?" I shouted, the panic finally bursting out. "He knew your name. He knew everything about us." Her eyes were wide, shimmering with fear. "I didn't want to hear his voice anymore," she said. I couldn't. I tried calling the number back. Once, twice, 3 times. It didn't even ring, just an instant dead tone. I looked at her again. She was trembling, clutching her hands tightly together. "Just drive," she said quietly. Please. So I did. The road stretched ahead into the blackness, our headlights barely piercing the falling snow. For a while, neither of us spoke. The air in the car felt heavy, like we were breathing fear itself. 10 minutes passed. No new calls. No sound except the tires crunching over the road. Finally, I said, Catherine, how could he have known? She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, she said, I don't know. But I swear, Luke, I don't know anyone who'd do this. Something in her voice didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was just fear, or maybe it was something else. I didn't respond. I just drove on, the cold creeping deeper into my chest, knowing that something about tonight was far from over. When we finally reached her driveway, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The porch light was off, the snow untouched. No signs that anyone had been waiting for us. Catherine unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. Let's just go inside, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded, though something in me hesitated. The woods surrounding her house were dark, too dark. No movement, no sound, not even wind. It was like the whole world had stopped to listen. We hurried to the door. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking, and when the lock finally clicked, she pushed it open and flicked the lights on. Everything looked normal, warm, safe, but I didn't feel safe. The silence inside was deafening. My chest was tight again, that familiar burning under my ribs like my body knew danger was close. I tried to shake it off. I'll grab our bags, I muttered, turning back toward the car. That's when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I froze. The screen flickered like static before the display stabilized. It wasn't the same number as before. This one had her area code. Catherine, I called quietly. Come here. She stepped into the hallway, still pale. What is it? My thumb hovered over the answer button. He's calling again. Before she could stop me, I answered. For a second, there was nothing but breathing, slow, deliberate, too close to the mic. Then a voice whispered, I told you I was here for her. I looked up. Catherine was standing in front of me, staring at my phone like she'd seen a ghost. Then, from somewhere inside the house, I heard another phone ringing. The same ringtone. It was coming from upstairs. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't even think. I sprinted toward the stairs, following the sound. But the moment I reached the top, it stopped. Dead silence again. Behind me, Catherine screamed. I turned back just in time to see the front door wide open, and her phone lying on the floor, screen cracked, still glowing with a missed call. The name on it read, Luke. That was the last thing I remember before the lights went out.